It all began on a seemingly ordinary night on Stephen Colbert's famed late-night talk show. The atmosphere was light, the crowd buzzing with anticipation, and the energy inside the studio electric. Stephen, as always, brought his charming mix of humor and insight, ready to tackle another politically charged conversation with one of the most outspoken voices on Capitol Hill, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Known for her fierce opinions and unapologetic demeanor, Crockett had become a firebrand in the political landscape. But what happened that night would leave the audience stunned and the internet ablaze. Nobody expected the discussion to spiral into a storm of raised voices, unapologetic jabs, and a moment that would ultimately force Colbert to cut the interview short and ask his guest to leave. From the very first moment Jasmine took the stage, there was an edge in the air. She wore a confident smile, waved to the cheering crowd, and exchanged friendly greetings with Stephen. The conversation started innocently in what Colbert asked about current legislation, her fight for justice, and her rising popularity. Jasmine answered with wit and passion, speaking from the heart as she always does. But then, Colbert made a pivot, bringing up recent criticisms against her social media behavior and a controversial interview clip that had recently gone viral. The tension in the room shifted almost instantly. Jasmine's smile dimmed slightly, and her tone became sharper. "You know, Stephen," she said, "they love to take a black woman's voice out of context when she speaks with power." Stephen tried to soften the tone, replying, "I think it's more about how things are interpreted in the public, i.e. a context or not. People have opinions." Jasmine didn't back down. "Of course they do, and those opinions are often shaped by a media that doesn't like truth when it's coming from someone like me." The audience let out a collective murmur. It was clear that Jasmine wasn't here to sugarcoat anything, and Colbert realized the conversation was taking a serious turn. Instead of backing off, he leaned in. "But isn't there a line between truth and provocation?" he asked. "Do you ever feel your approach can be too aggressive for the dialogue we need?" The question didn't land well. Jasmine narrowed her eyes. "Too aggressive?" she repeated. "Let me tell you something, Stephen. When men on that hill shout and thump their fists, they're called passionate. When I raise my voice, I'm called aggressive. You see the difference?" The audience erupted into applause. Colbert nodded respectfully but wasn't willing to concede the point entirely. "I hear you," he said, "but at what point does tone overshadow message?" Jasmine didn't hesitate. "When tone matters more than content, you're already failing the cause." The two stared at each other for a moment, both clearly standing their ground. Stephen, clearly trying to regain control of the moment, attempted to shift gears, asking about her future and politics. But Jasmine wasn't done. "Why do we always shift when things get real?" she asked. "Isn't this show about digging into the truth?" Colbert smiled uncomfortably. "Yes, but I also have to keep the show balanced." Jasmine shook her head. "Balanced for whom?" "The viewers or the sponsors?" The jab was subtle, but the impact wasn't lost. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some applauded her boldness, others looked on in disbelief. This wasn't just a clash of ideas, it was a philosophical collision. Jasmine began speaking directly to the audience. "This is exactly why voices like mine are needed," she said. "Not to fit into neat little segments, not to make people comfortable, but to shake the table." Stephen interrupted. "Jasmine, I respect that, but this isn't a campaign rally. This is a conversation," she replied, "and I'm conversing. It's just that you're not used to hearing it delivered like this." Another wave of gasps and claps swept through the crowd. The back and forth wasn't just heated up, it was electrifying. Viewers watching from home were now glued to their screens, unsure of what might happen next. The studio staff was now visibly uneasy. Producers were whispering into earpieces, clearly deciding whether to cut to commercial. But Stephen, always the professional, pushed forward. "Okay," he said, "let's go back to the basics. You've been critical of the system, and what do you see as the solution?" Jasmine leaned forward. "Truth, accountability, and the willingness to let go of polite performance and get uncomfortable." Her voice was calm now, but firm. "If your platform can't handle real talk, then maybe it's just another tool of distraction." That's when Colbert took off his glasses, a subtle but clear sign of frustration. "I think we've made our positions clear." "Still," Jasmine continued, "what's clear is that when a black woman challenges the status quo, She's told she's too loud, too emotional, too everything. Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's the system that's broken. The crowd was split again, some cheering, others whispering. Colbert took a deep breath. I brought you on to have a productive discussion, not to turn this into a confrontation. Jasmine replied, maybe confrontation is the only path to change. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone in the studio knew they were witnessing something far bigger than a late-night segment. Then came the moment no one expected. Stephen leaned in again, this time speaking more sternly. Congresswoman, with all due respect, if you're not willing to have a dialogue and insist on preaching instead of discussing, we may need to wrap this up early. Jasmine smirked. Wrap it up then. Colbert blinked, taken aback. You're serious? Jasmine crossed her arms. Dead serious. The crowd gasped again. It was clear this segment wasn't going to end on a high note. Stephen looked toward the production team, then turned back to Jasmine and said the words that made headlines the next morning. Okay, then this interview is over. Jasmine removed her mic calmly and stood. Thank you for the opportunity, Stephen, she said, voice unwavering. As she exited the stage, the studio audience was left in stunned silence. Some clapped, others didn't know how to react. Stephen turned back to the camera, regaining his signature composure. We'll be right back, he said. The screen quickly cut to commercial, but in those few seconds, a storm had already begun brewing across social media. Twitter, YouTube, and news outlets exploded with takes. Some called it censorship, others hailed it as bravery. Everyone had an opinion, and the moment had gone viral.